स्वागत है जी आप सभी का हमारी एक और नए वीडियो के अंदर। तो कैसे हो आप सभी लोग? आई होप सभी अच्छे होंगे। तो आज करेंगे चैप्टर 7 अ विजिट टू द कॉम्ब्रिज की रीडिंग। तो करते हैं। बिफोर यू रेड, दिस इज द स्टोरी ऑफ अ मीटिंग बिटवीन टू extraordinary people, both of them disabled or differently abled. As we now say, Stephen Hawking is one of the greatest scientists of our time. He suffers from a form of paralysis that confines him to a wheelchair and allows him to speak only by punching buttons on a computer, which speaks for him in a machine like voice. Firdoz Kanga is a writer and journalist who lives and works in Mumbai. Kanga was born with brittle bones that tended to break easily when he was a child. Like Hawking, Kanga moves around in a wheelchair. The two great men exchange thoughts on what it means to live life in a wheelchair and on how the so-called normal people react to the disabled. Cambridge was my metaphor for England, and it was strange that when I left, it had become altogether something else because I had met Stephen Hawking there. It was a walking tour through Combridge that the guide mentioned. Stephen Hawking, poor man who is quite disabled now, though he is a worthy successor to Isaac Newton, whose chair he has at the university. And I started because I had quite forgotten that this most brilliant and completely paralyzed astrophysicist, the author of A Brief History of Time, one of the biggest bestsellers ever, lived here. When the walking tour was done, I rushed to the phone booth and almost tearing the cord so it could reach me outside. Phoned Stephen Hawking's house. There was his assistant on the line, and I told him I had come in a wheelchair from India. Perhaps he thought I had propelled myself all the way to written about my travels in Britain. I had to see Professor Hawking. Even 10 minutes would do. Half an hour, he said, from 3:30 to 4. And suddenly I felt weak all over. Growing up disabled, you get fed up with people asking you to be brave, as if you have a courage account on which you are too lazy to draw a check. You, the only thing that makes you stronger is seeing somebody like you achieving something huge. Then you know how much is possible, and you reach out further that you ever thought you could. I haven't been brave, said his disembodied computer voice. The next afternoon, I will had no choice. Surely, I wanted to say, living creatively with the reality of his disintegrating body was a choice, but I kept quiet because I felt guilty every time I spoke to him, forcing him to respond. There he was, tapping at the little switch in his hand, trying to find the words on his computer with the only bit of movement like left to him, his long pale fingers. Every so often his eyes would shut in frustrated exhaustion, and sitting opposite him I could feel his anguish, the mind buoyant with thoughts that come out in frozen perhaps, and sentences stiff as corpses. A lot of people seem to think that disabled people are chronically unhappy. I said, I know that's not true myself. Are you often laughing inside? About the 3 minutes later, he responded, I find it amusing when people patronize me, and do you find it annoying when someone like me comes and disturbs you in your work? The answer flashed yes. Then he smiled his one way smile, and I knew without being sentimental or silly and that I was looking at one of the most beautiful men in the world. A first glimpse of him is shocking because he is like a still photograph, as if all those pictures of him is magazines and newspapers have turned three dimensional. Then you see that head twisted sideways into a slump, the torso shrunk inside the pale blue shirt, the washed legs. You look at his eyes, which can speak still, and they are saying something huge and urgent. It is hard to tell what, but you are shaken because you have seen something you never thought could be seen before you, like a lantern whose walls are worn so thin you glimpse only the light inside is the incandences of a man. The body, almost irrelevant, exists only like a case made of shadows, so that I, no believer in eternal souls, know that this is what each of us is, everything else as an accessory. What do you think is the best thing about being disabled? I had asked him earlier. I don't think there is anything good about being disabled, I think I said. You do discover how much kindness there is in the world. Yes, he said. It was a disadvantage of his voice synthesizer that it could convey no inflection, no shades or tone, and I could not tell how enthusiastically he agreed with me. Every time I shifted in my chair or turned my wrist to watch the time, I wanted to make every one of our 30 minutes count. I felt a huge relief and exhilaration in the possibilities of my body. How little it mattered then that I could never walk or even stand. I told him how he had been an inspiration beyond clicked for me and surely for others. Did that thought help him? No, he said, and I thought how foolish I was to ask when your body is a claustrophic big room and the walls are growing narrower day by day. It does not do much good to know that there are people outside smiling with administration to see you breathing still. Is there any advice you can give disabled people, something that might help make life better? They should concentrate on what they are good at. I think the things like the disabled Olympics are a waste of time. I know that you mean. I remembered the years I did spend trying to play a Spanish guitar considerable larger than I was, and how gleefully I had unstringed it. One night the half hour was up. I think I will annoyed you enough, I said, grinning. Thank you for stay. I waited. How some tea? I can show you the garden. The garden was as big as a park, but Stephen Hawking covered every inch, rumbling along in his motorized wheelchair while I dodged to keep out of the way. We could not talk very much. The sun made him silent, the letters on his screen disappearing in the glare. An hour later, we were ready to leave. I did not know what to do. I could not kiss him or cry. I touched his shoulder and we wailed out into the summer evening. I looked back and I knew he was waving through. He was not watching him, and embodiment of my bravest self, the one I was moving towards, that one I had believed in for so many years alone. I knew that my journey was over for now.